Paula Pete Works here, coming to you once again with One Piece chapter 1129 entitled Living Dolls. So, first thing is first, shout out to old school YouTuber Tekking 101 because he correctly guessed the identity of the Sun Deity. It is the navigator of the new giant pirates who is named Road. This makes a lot of sense. It really does, because it would make sense that a navigator would have a nerdy hobby like making this whole diorama, and it would make sense that a navigator would have a map of said diorama, because that's what they do. They map make. This is interesting too, because out of all the new giant pirates, it's only Road and Goldberg who didn't really have that much going on about them. So I'm glad that we got some more context about Road, because the next one that we have to learn about is Goldberg, who is the cook of the new giant pirates. We've learned about Gerd, who was Big Mom's friend, and we see her all during the Big Mom flashback. And then we learn about Stanson even further back, because Stanson is a member of the New Giant Pirates who is the shipwright, and he was actually the giant in prison with Rayleigh during the whole Sabaody Archipelago arc. So that's cool. And of course, Hydrugen, the captain, we learned about during Dressrosa. So yeah, it's just Goldberg who is left. Also, and I've talked about Goldberg many times on the channel now, the interesting thing about Goldberg is that when we see him, he's carrying this weird shield. I have gone back and forth on whether that shield is a homie or a Zoan, but seeing as how Road has Iscat, and Iscat seems to be a Zoan user, I'm more so leaning towards the idea that Goldberg's shield is some sort of Zoan. Maybe it's a shield that ate a Zoan fruit. That's what we're going with now. I think that's more likely just based on what the crew has at their disposal already. So yeah, I'm thinking that Goldberg's shield is probably just a Zoan fruit user. But the funny thing about Road being the sun deity is that, and a lot of other people pointed this out too, Tekking guessed it right on the head, but I heard a lot of people saying this, and I was completely in left field about it. But they wear the same footwear. They have the same type of shoes. I was convinced this was a woman because Nami is wearing similar shoes. So that's super interesting that, yeah, no, that was the big hint. The footwear was the hint. And the chapter really is just about the Straw Hats discovering what has happened to them. And we discover how Road obtained them. Apparently, Mugen, when the Straw Hats were sailing through the Sleeping Mist Belt, which is something I want to talk about real quick because it reminds me of two filler arcs that we had back in the day with One Piece. The Rainbow Mist arc and the Ocean's Dream arc. Because this is a mist in canon that, of course, makes you fall asleep when you sail through it. The Rainbow Mist arc was the filler arc in which the crew was trapped in this giant mist cloud that took them into a different dimension called Ape's Concert. So that's one part of it. And then the other part is the Ocean's Dream arc in which the crew encounter a seahorse who originally was the main antagonist of the One Piece video game, One Piece Ocean's Dream and One Piece Dragon Dream. And in the anime and the video game, the main antagonist is a seahorse. Now, the seahorse's name is Noko. Noko has the ability of the Namu Namu no Mi in the video games, but he just has this weird ability in the anime. It doesn't really specify whether he's a Devil Fruit user or not in the anime. This is interesting too, because so far, this is the only animal in the entirety of the canon, as far as I know, that has a Paramecia type Devil Fruit. So that's interesting in itself. But yeah, he makes you fall asleep. So yeah, that's why I say the mist that we have in the canon now feels like a combination between those two concepts. A giant mist formation in the ocean. Said mist formation makes you fall asleep. So that's pretty cool. So getting back to it from the top down, we have our 16th entry in the Yamato cover story in which Shinobu has gotten fat again. No! Yep, plumpy dumpy. Back again. Oh well. It is what it is. And Otama is training and Yamato is watching while atop Otama's dog as she's cheering her on. So that's pretty neat. Yamato has made it to Amagasa Village. Okay, so I don't know where this cover story is going. I don't. I guess this is to show her going all around Wano still. I guess that's just the point. But we haven't really seen anything big happen out of this. Hopefully after this, she does come back into the main story because she said that is what she was going to do after pilgrimaging around Wano. But we shall see what Yamato's story is in the future. It would be very, very on brand for her to be in Elbaf. Just saying, because we'll probably get into some giant genealogy, and I think Onis are related to ancient giants, but hey, we shall see in the future what happens. So, starting from the top, yes, the sun deity has found out that his pets have been obliterated and his little town is going into ruin. And the Straw Hats are making their escape on the back of Iscat. It's very funny that Luffy says he's going to try hard not to mess up his hard work because he admires the craftsmanship in the world the giant has made. But yeah, around this time, everyone comes to the realization as to what nature the whole room is. It's just a big playset for a giant. And here's some really cool character, or I guess power development from Nami, which answers a bit of issue that people have had with her going from island to island and not really jotting down how the world looks. Like, we don't see that from arc to arc, because as she found the map of this place in the last chapter, she has memorized the entirety of what the map is and simply has tossed it away. So this goes to show you that her memory is excellent, and she can probably remember how places look verbatim. That's why perhaps during their downtime, she just goes back and adds the sections that they just came from to her giant map of the world somewhere on the sunny. At least that's what I think, because this goes to show you that her memory is excellent. I don't know if we've ever had a better or similar example to this in the past, but it's nice that we have it now. And this, at least to me, answers a bunch of concerns people have about her not making a map after every arc. So yeah, this answers it. She just remembers how places look. And with incredible speed too, because that was like, what, a few seconds and she remembered everything about the map that she just read. So yeah, the Yggdrasil tree is just against the back mirror of the diorama. So I wonder how he would enter normally, because the glass seems to be blocking the entryway to the diorama. So maybe he has to remove the glass, because later on we realize that the people trapped here do realize it's a diorama. And you know what makes him great? What makes Rogue great here? His giant sun staff is just a big butterfly net. That's incredible, dog. That's insane. That's incredible. I love that his staff is just a big butterfly net, because he puts the netting in it and it's about to capture the Straw Hats on top of Iscat, but then Zoro and Sanji just break through it with ease, which surprises him, which it shouldn't, given that he knows who these people are. But continuing, we finally get to see what the ear deity looked like. And yes, this was the rabbit that was cooked and eaten by Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy. And he kind of looks like the giant rabbits back in Drum. I know a lot of people have been comparing this Star of Elbaf to Drum. So this is another, I guess, feather in those people's hats that, yeah, we have another Drum parallel here as we have this carnivorous rabbit. I think they're called Lothians, if I remember correctly. Can't remember off the top of my head. I think they're called Lothians, the giant white rabbits of Drum Island. But yeah, Road is very surprised that they beat it, which I don't know why. We get to see that, yes, Road is a giant nerd. He's a big fat nerd because he feels as though these events are playing out like an anime, right in his tiny miniature set. His diorama is a set for a grand adventure. Oh, he's enthralled by it. Look at him go. This is great. Elbaf is in safe hands. This is peak. This is so peak. Because he just goes on and on about like, yea, verily, evil has spawned. Heroes are being born in the world I created. This is so funny. He has a unique laugh. It's dee hee hee. So that's funny. I like that. He just keeps going on and on about how he loves that his minimalist little set with his living dolls are playing out like a grand fairy tale. He's so enthralled by the events. And this is also when we get to see how, the people are aware that they are locked in like a detention center of sorts, that this place isn't real. And they were all just playing into the act that Road was setting up. So I wonder where the diorama is. Is it on a ship or is it in Road's house on Elbaf? That's the question now. I really want to see what happens about that. He says that Haruden recognizes you, but he doesn't. And I want to see what you do next. That's when Usopp shoots out a lethal green star skull bomb grass when he tries to penetrate the wall on the other side of the mirror. It does not break the wall, but it does shatter the mirror, which is impressive in itself because you have to think the mirror has to be super thick because we're talking about one-way giant glass. So it has to be at least several feet thick, which is an interesting concept. So yeah, no, his ammo is real. It's just that there's a brick wall, a giant brick wall, presumably made of real brick behind said mirror. So it's understandable why maybe one shot wasn't able to break the wall, but the fact they could even break the mirror is crazy. So continuing, the giant Road calls out to the Straw Hats, each by name, with the honorific Tasso. Now, on Reddit, they were talking about how Tasso is in reference to how people refer to anime and manga characters affectionately. So maybe this is why he's doing that, because to him, in this setting, they are fictional characters playing into his game, even though they're the real Straw Hat crew. So that just kind of plays up his creepiness, which is great. But then we have a conversation, an actual conversation between Nami and Usopp, and them just talking about how the giant has pissed them off. And that's when Sanji turns around and says, I'll never forgive him for dressing you up, which Zach and I were talking about that in the 46th episode of the Rose Gold podcast, how we were hoping this was a girl. Because if it were a guy, it would be super creepy because he has stripped Nami down naked and dressed her up like this. Oh my God, Road is a pervert, bruh. He's an absolute pervert. And that's when we get the flashback of Road. Because it was Mugen, the crow that they just beat up, who brought in the entire Thousand Sunny to Road. That's when people talk about like power scaling and stuff. I'm like, shut up. No, you're wrong. Because you don't even need pixel scaling and all that. The fact that there is a crow that can pick up something as large as 1,000 Sunny is crazy. You know how big that has to be? Oh my God, because the 1,000 Sunny is 183 feet and 9 inches in height. And in length, it is 127 feet long and 11 inches. So a crow is able to pick up a ship that big with ease and carry it to its master. Bruh, nah. No, I mean, just simple logic like that, that's huge, bruh. And this is not a special crow. This is some dude's pet. I mean, think about it, brother. And they just bit up this crow. Whatever. But yeah, okay. Road has the Straw Hat crew delivered to him. He's freaking out because he's like, what's the real Straw Hat crew, bruh? And that's when we get the confirmation of the sleeping Mist Belt, because he sees it weird that the crew are fast asleep. That's how we know, too, that these haven't been hallucinations Those might have just been artist mistakes in the past. But like I believe in 1126 and 27 is where people point out how there were a lot of weird things going on. But yeah, so this is the mist that I was talking about earlier. And we know this isn't just because of the green fairy they had drunk prior. Okay, so it has nothing to do with the beverages that they had consumed in the previous chapters. Okay, and we get a small flashback of Rogue talking to his captain, getting angry that, yeah, they're pledging their allegiances to the Straw Hat crew because I guess he wanted to just be under Buggy, which this is a very interesting crossover of events because, yeah, this is the one crew that links the Straw Hats to Cross Guild. I find that very funny. He doesn't want to serve the Straw Hats because he feels that it is an affront to giant pride to serve itty bitty humans. That is when he affectionately fawns over Queen Namitaso, whom he has in his hands. My God, he's such a pervert. And he sprays the crew with more sleeping gas, which leads us back into the present, of which the clouds of the diorama, or I should say rather the sky, has been filled with a black cloud, which is Zeus, and he gets struck with a thunderbolt. Again, just saying again, just for reference, when talking about power scaling, we know how big this room has to be, right? And given this shot, Road has to fit within this room, okay? So this room is gigantic. Even for him, it's pretty big. Zeus is able to fill up the ceiling of this room and produce a lightning bolt big enough to engulf Road. Hey, look, Zeus is real, okay? Zeus is real. I just have to tell you these things so you remember and make a note of how big all of this is. This road is already bigger than Stein's castle, the castle that Nami was in at the start of all this in 1126. So, brother, the scale is huge. It's huge. Just keep that in mind when arguing with people online. Don't use pixel scaling, use scale, because One Piece is usually pretty good about scale. But with all that being said, we have to point out someone else who was absolutely correct. And that person is Paula Bean Watson, because I told you that Gear Forth was gone. I told you because from the point in which Usopp and Nami are talking to the end of the chapter, Luffy is revving up for a little Gear Forth, right? He uses Gum Gum Kong Gun to break through the wall of the diorama on the other side. So the brick wall that was behind the glass wall that was the fake sky. With that being said, I told you, and I'll put this up on screen right now. After 1127, I had said that Gear Forth was gone after we saw Luffy use Gum Gum Elephant Stamp on Iscat, and he called it a Gear Forth move. I had said how weird that was, that one, an elephant attack was being attributed to a kicking move, and that it was an elephant attack under the arsenal of Gear Forth. So this means, like I said in that video, that the entirety of Gear Forth is now cannibalized by the base set. You will not see Bound Man, you will not see Snake Man, you will not see Tank Man, because from various times, from the start even in Dressrosa, we have seen that the main weakness of Gear Forth is that when he uses it to the fullest, it takes a toll on him. 10 minutes of hockey recovery. So what better way to show the growth of Luffy than to show that things that were once strenuous for him to do can now be done with ease? That's what we're seeing here. A Kong gun is pulled out with ease. And when you think about it, just on the basis of what Gear Forth is, once again, when you have Gear Second with its speed, right, and you have Gear Third with its strength, the purpose of Gear Fourth was to shore up the weaknesses of both of those maneuvers and combine their strengths to tag and do damage on Don Quixote Doflamingo. So Why wouldn't you make that a part of the base set? Why would you have a maneuver that is lacking in one or more areas where you can have a competent set that combines the strength of the two? And really, you should be surprised because in the post time skip, we have already established that it has now become a theme that in the future, things that Luffy has grown out of will just be cannibalized by the base set because Gear 3rd and Gear 2nd in the post time skip moving forward don't exist in the same capacity as they did in the pre-time skip. In the pre-time skip, these were two separate transformations. These were two independent transformations. And in multiple forms of the franchise, they were treated as such. But in the post-time skip, they were just part of the main move set. They were part of base. So it would make sense that after Egghead, after we're getting more and more context on Gear 5th, Gear 5th now into the end of the series is most likely going to be your go-to actual transformation. Because when you start to think about Gear 4th, once again, is not much different from Gear 3rd and Gear 2nd. It has the same properties. It's air pumping. That's all it is. And it's interesting too because people were mentioning during the time that Wano was going on that Luffy's inflation control had improved immensely. Because there would be times, like I remember during the time in which he got into the sumo match with the fat guy at the start of Wano, that he just went to Gear 3rd without much issue at all. And it was a unhockey imbued Gear 3rd. So it were times like that in which people started to point out, like, yeah, his inflation control is really, really good now. And this just improves upon what has already been established in that. So I think when you start to think about Gear 4th, all the abilities of Gear 4th, Luffy just has normally. So it really doesn't make sense to keep that type of transformation around, especially when it has so many drawbacks. It has more that it takes from him than it adds to him. The only thing I would say that it has as an advantage, even over Gear 5th, is that it has more defensive capabilities, because when he combines Haki with his rubber body, you get a very odd vulcanized rubber effect in which he can be pierced or cut, unless the piercing or cut is extremely strong. But yeah, casual cutting attacks just won't work. And even when they should work, when he puts a lot of pressure in one area, like with Tank Man, they even fail then. So yeah, it's been established that yes, Gear 4th as a concept is extremely resistant to a classic weakness of Luffy, which is cutting. That's why in that video and many other videos before that one, I am still going to say that even though Bowman, Snake Man, and Tank Man are gone as we know them, it's very, very possible that in the future there will be a Gear 6th, and that Gear 6th will just be Gear 5th, but with the form designations of Gear 4th, and with the defensive capabilities of Gear 4th. So you'll have a Bowman, a Snake Man, and a Tank Man, but just in Gear 5th. And I think that would probably be the next point of exhaustion for Luffy, because now the point of exhaustion for Luffy is Gear 5th. But as we keep going further and further into the series, Gear 5th will just be, I still think Gear 5th will be the go-to transformation ability, as we've seen now in chapter 1128, that he'll just go into that. So as he keeps using it, the exhaustion will become less and less and less until it's non-existent. But then the new point of exhaustion will be this Gear 6th, using Haki in an extreme way with Gear 5th. Because we have seen over the years, once again, that as he gets used to things, he just becomes acclimated to them and they no longer exhaust him. And with that being said, Gear 5th is already at a quicker turnaround time than any other gear before, especially considering Gear 3rd and Gear 4th, because there have been times, especially during Onigashima, in which Luffy will just recover on the spot after using Gear 5th. So it's already been shown that Gear 5th doesn't have an exact science to its exhaustion. Kind of like Gear 2nd was. It wasn't really clear how much Gear Second exhausted Luffy when he was using it like back in this lobby. So we're kind of in a similar situation here, but with a bit less stakes, which makes sense because there should be less stakes with his transformations as he grows. That's how you display growth throughout the narrative for this character. It only makes sense if you ask me. So in the future, I still think, like, say, the things that we saw Gear Fourth do, like the all the Snake Man stuff, I think you'll start to see that in the base set as well. Seeing as how we're seeing a basic attack from Bowman and Kong Gun here in this chapter, I think you'll see Culverin. I think you'll see Black Mamba, because all that is just him using the techniques of the six powers in accordance with his punches. Because if you noticed, when he uses all his Snake Man stuff, it's done in a similar way to how Lucy moves. Because how Lucy would move in those zigzag patterns, he was combining Shave, Soru with a Geppo or Moonwalk together to move around freely, to fly. So that's what Luffy was doing in Snake Man. So I think with this new development, we've expanded the base set tenfold, because all of what he's done in Take Man, Bow Man, and Snake Man now is a part of the base set, which is super fire. And now, based on what we saw in 1127, everything from Gear Third and presumably Gear Second is now combined with Gear Fourth, because we have an elephant stat now. So we may have a Hawk Kong gun or a bigger version of Red Rock. I don't know. Oh, that would be really cool. Like a Kong variant of Rock in which he sucks in his fist up and it's burning and it shoots out like a cannon. I think that's possible. I think that's very possible. So his moveset has expanded greatly. I may do another video about this because there's so much to talk about just based on this concept. But with that being said, yes, the Straw Hats are breaking out of the diorama, and that is it. Zeus has returned to being the Climate Tech, and the crew are on their way out. I can't wait to see what the B team is doing, and how has the B team developed? Who are we going to follow? Is there a C team? You know, I can't wait to see how this develops. Very good chapter. Road is a pervert. Shout out to Tekking. And with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Paula Pete Watson.